So what you will need to do, just click the button that allows you to stay in the meeting, and it is recording what we are sharing during this session. Fantastic. So what we are going to look at today is the different types of sentences and how those sentences are structured. And I'm just going to share a few screens with you to begin with. And here we go. So the first bit that we need to be aware of is the vocab, the language that we use when we are speaking about sentences. So the first part of this session, we are going to focus on a main clause. And a main clause will use these next four words: the subject, the verb, object, and complement. And we will speak about what those words mean as we look at the main clauses. We will then move on to the sentence types, and we will look at simple, compound, and complex sentences. So there are three different sentence structures. Within those sentence structures, we will be using the language of coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions. Now, I'm hoping some of you will probably be familiar with some of this language. Some of you, it may be that bits of this language, it's new to you, but we will explain it as we work through the session. Okay, so the first bit that we are going to look at is a main clause. Now, this is where English gets really confusing, because main clauses, they have other names as well. Okay, so if you hear someone talking about an independent clause, they are also speaking about a main clause. And main clauses are independent because they make sense on their own. They don't need anything else adding to them to make sense. They are also called simple sentences. So when we talk about main clauses, we are also speaking about simple sentences. And as we move through the afternoon, you will see how we can add to the main clause or add to a simple sentence to make the other types of sentence. And our main focus this afternoon is going to be on this main clause part of it, because the main clause is used to make all three sentence types. So although we are looking at a main clause, we are also, in this part of the session, looking at a simple sentence. Okay, and when we talk about a simple sentence or a main clause, we are talking about one single idea. Okay, and within that idea, it needs to have a subject, so it needs to have someone doing something, and it needs to have the verb, and the verb is the action, so what they are doing. Now, there were two other words that were on this first grid here. It could have an object. So if I am talking about the children were watching a film, the a film is what they are watching. So that's kind of the object that is being watched. It may also have what we call a complement. And a complement is a word or a phrase that finishes the sentence, and it often adds more meaning to the noun, but they're used to finish off sentences. So let's have a look then at the activity here. And this is at the top of your sheet, so you can kind of follow along with me as we are doing this. So I'm looking at my very first sentence, and I'm looking there, and first of all, the key bit that I'm going to look for first of all is the verb, because they're often the easiest bits to spot in the sentence. So the first one, it's a tiny bit tricky because my verb, I'm looking along, I've got the word is. Now, this is part of the verb to be, okay? So is my verb. And then now I know what my verb is, I need to think, what is my subject? What is the main thing in the sentence? And because I have the word is, it is a linking verb, so it's linking two ideas together. So I can look here and I can see that the gerbil is the subject. Now, in this sentence, it finishes with the brown, and the brown is telling me more about the gerbil. It's telling me more about the subject. So from that, I can work out that the brown is a subject. Let me just stop sharing my screen because I think, has someone got their chat tab open? Because if you have your chat open, could you close it because it's stopping me writing on the right hand side of the screen. So let's just try again. Hopefully it will work. So we'd got as far as the gerbil was the subject, is my verb, and then brown, it was linking to the gerbil, so it was the subject complement. Let me just quickly type that. And when we talk about this type of complement, it is different to a compliment where you say something nice to someone. Okay, so that's spelt differently. So we've got the subject complement at the end here. Then the next sentence, looking at the structure of it, I can easily spot the verb in that because it is an action verb. So I can spot that the verb is ate, so it's in the past tense. I can see that Mark is doing the eating, so he is the subject, he is the person doing the action. Now, this follows a different structure because the pizza is what is being eaten. So the pizza in this sentence is the object. Okay. So next one, looking at that, that's quite easy to spot. Broke is the verb. Now, this one, it doesn't have the name of a person. It uses a pronoun, and you can still have the pronoun as the subject in your sentence. So although I don't know the name, he is the subject of my sentence. And then this bit here, my noun phrase, the plate, that is what has been broken. So that is the object in my sentence. Now, next sentence, Sally worked in a shop. It is slightly different because of the way that it is structured. Now, I can easily spot my verb because I know that the worked is the verb, it shows the action. This time the subject's a bit easier to spot. I can see her name, so I've got Sally. And what I need to then think about is the end part of my sentence, because looking at that, I know that the word in is a preposition. So I've got in a shop. Now, that part there is a phrase, okay? And it is a phrase that links the working. It links to where Sally is working. So it is linking here. and it has two jobs in that sentence. Okay, it is an adverbial phrase. It is showing where Sally is working. It is also a complement because it finishes off the sentence. It gives more information. Okay. And it is giving more information about where Sally is working. The next one, now I've spotted the verb in it. So they voted him leader. I can see voted is my verb. Now I've not got a name, so I need to think who is doing the action. Is it the they or is it the him? And following the structure from the English language, we know that often the subject comes before the verb. So they is the subject that is doing the voting. Now, in this sentence, we have an object as well. And it's a bit strange because him is the object, it's who they voted for. Okay, so the him is the object. And then we have this final part of the sentence here where they voted him leader. Now, the leader is telling us more about him. So it's linking to the him. So it isn't telling us more about the subject, it's telling us more about the object. So it is actually that word leader is an object complement. So we'll add that on the end there. And then the last sentence, it has quite a lot going in it. So we've got, they painted the shed green. Now, I can see straight away, painted, it's an action verb, it's what they are doing. So I know that that is the verb. And it follows the same structure as the sentence above. My subject is they. They are the people that are painting. Okay. And then I need to look again and I need to think, is there an object in that sentence? What are they painting? And I can see here they are painting the shed. So that is my object. Okay, so we've got the very simple structure, subject, verb, object. But again, at the end of my sentence, I have the green part of it. And green, it is telling me more about the shed. So it is going to be a complement, and it is a complement that is linked to the object, not the subject. Okay, so this part here again, it is an object complement. So what I will do as we go along, once we have finished one of the exercises, I will save the screen so that I can then send it through to your parents so that you've got the answers as well. Okay, so I've saved that. I will send it through to your parents once we have finished. Now, the next bit that I want us to look about is the actual use of coordinating conjunctions. And in English, there are only 7 coordinating conjunctions. They are the ones that you use as your fanboys conjunctions. And you need to be really, really careful with them because they are used in 3 different ways. The first way that we're going to look at is where they join different words together. The second way we are going to look at is when they join phrases. And the final way is when they join clauses together. Now, your fanboys conjunctions, for and nor, but or yet so. Those 7 words. And when we look at those conjunctions, there are only 3 of them, or and nor. Only those 3 are used to join words together. So you could have fish and chips, coffee and tea, or you might have tea and biscuits, or jelly and ice cream. That's when you've got 2 things together. Now, the next one, or, is when I'm giving someone a choice. Would you like coffee or tea? Would you like a biscuit or cake? You're giving them the option. The last one, nor, is a negative one. So you might say, I don't like hamsters nor gerbils. You are given 2 things that are negative. So I don't like fish nor chips. I don't like either of them. Okay, so that is joining the words together. To join the phrases, you can use but, or, and nor. So you're given alternatives. She likes to eat fruit, but not vegetables. She doesn't like the vegetables. And he has no time for television nor football, so he doesn't do either. You can choose between walking or riding your bike. And you could use and if you could say, you can go to the park and ride your bike or something like that, where you are giving 2 things, you would use the and together. Now, the way that we are going to be using the coordinating conjunctions today is for this. You are using coordinating conjunction. All 7 of them can join 2 main clauses together. And when we have 2 main clauses or 3 main clauses joined together, it is called a compound sentence. So what we looked at, first of all, they were the simple sentences where we had one idea. Now, my compound sentences are where I have 2 ideas, but they are linked in some way. And I would use my fanboys conjunction to link them. So if I look at these sentences here, I went to the park, but my brother stayed at home. The first bit I am going to look for in this exercise is the actual conjunction. So I went to the park, but my brother stayed at home. So this is my conjunction. So the first bit here is one main clause. I went to the park. The second bit here, my brother stayed at home, is my second main clause. Okay. They could be individual sentences. I went to the park, full stop. My brother stayed at home, full stop. I could just have them as 2 simple sentences, but I've linked them together with the word but to make a compound sentence. Now, within that compound sentence, I have still got, in the first part of it, the subject, I. I have still got the verb, went. And in the second main clause, I have got the subject is my brother. It's not me as a subject in the second main clause. The brother is the subject. And then the verb, they stayed. Okay. And we're not going to look at the complements and the phrases in this bit. We're just focusing on the structure of it. So looking at the second compound sentence there, straight away I have spotted my conjunction and I've spotted the or, okay? And again, I have got a first main clause there. You can come to us. My second main clause, we can come to you. And notice in this, my subject is changing, because in my first main clause, I've got you as the subject and the come as your main verb, okay? But in the second main clause, I've got we as the subject, and my main verb is the come, okay? So let me move on to my next sentence and have a look. And straight away I'm scanning and I have got my conjunction here. And I have got, looking at this, my main clause at the beginning there. I have my second main clause here. And in this one, I have got the subject Max. Okay, so here's my subject. And I've got what we call a verb chain here. And because we are using what we call one of the progressive tenses, we're using the past progressive, you need these two bits linked together. So was fighting is my verb, okay? And then in my second main clause, he had to stay in his room. Max is still the subject, but instead of repeating his name, I've used the pronoun he. And then because of the way that it is structured, you would need to say stay is kind of the main verb. The had to is linked with that because of the tenses of it. And then looking at my next sentence, I need to remember my fanboys, and I have got there. Where is it? Here it is. Yet. So yet is my conjunction, and I can look again and I can say this is my first main clause, and he didn't win the race is my second main clause. Now I need to look again. This is a strange one because my subject doesn't have a name, so he is the subject, and the verb he trained, it's what he did, okay? And in the second main clause, I am still using he as the subject. And the verb part of it is win is your main verb. And when we learn a bit more about modal verbs, that will come in later on, okay? And the final one, now I need to look carefully at this because look at the way that it is structured. I've got fish and chips. Now, is this part here one main clause, or is this actually a different type of sentence? Because remember what we said a few minutes ago? We said that the conjunctions, this type of conjunction, your coordinating conjunction, is used to join words. And in this case, this bottom example, it doesn't follow the same structure. So the bottom example is actually a simple sentence, and the word and is used to join two words, fish and chips. It's not used because chips, it isn't a main clause. So for it to be a main clause, it would need the subject and the verb in it, okay? So just be careful when you are spotting your fanboys conjunction that it has a main clause at either side of it, okay? So far we've looked at your simple sentences or main clauses. We've looked at compound sentences that have your conjunctions in, your coordinating conjunctions. So let me save that so that I can send it through to your parents. And let's move on to the last type. Now, our last type of sentence is a complex sentence. And your complex sentence is made up of two different bits. You have a main clause that makes complete sense on its own. You then have something that is called a subordinate clause. And a subordinate clause begins with a subordinating conjunction. Okay. Now, there are a lot of different subordinating conjunctions. At school, you have possibly learned either a white bus or I saw a wobble to help you remember some of those conjunctions. I am going to send you, and I'll show you in a minute, a more complex list because um, you use different conjunctions for different reasons, okay? And when we talk about this idea of a subordinate clause, it doesn't make sense on its own. And sometimes you hear the word a dependent clause, and a dependent clause is another name for a subordinate clause. And they call it that because it depends on the main clause for the meaning. Okay. So subordinate clauses, you can't have them in a sentence on their own. They have to have the main clause to go along with it. And this is a list that I will send through to your parents. And I think it is slightly more helpful than the white bus or the wubub method because it shows you the reason for using them. So if you want to join ideas together and give reasons, you would pick one of those conjunctions. If you want to use a rule or a condition, you would use one of these. And I think this grid's quite helpful because you can then decide which conjunction you want. And although we will look at this in a different session, if you are adding a relative clause, you would use these conjunctions at the bottom, okay? And the relative pronouns, they act as your conjunction, although they may not always fit into your white bus or the wubub sort of acronym, okay? So the last part on your grid, and I'm looking because some of these might be the relative clauses, some of it's used for giving extra information, but all of these sentences have a conjunction in them and they all have the subordinating conjunction. So that's the bit that I'm going to look for to begin with. So in my first sentence, you can play on the computer when. So it's given the time that they can play on the computer when you have eaten your dinner. So I can look here and I can see again this part at the beginning of my sentence here. And let me just do it in the lighter color. This part here is your main clause. You can play on the computer. The bit that begins with the when is the start of your subordinate clause. So your subordinate clause is in pink. And I'm just going to put a circle around, because this here is our subordinating conjunction. And I can look here, you is the subject, play is the verb, it's the action that they're going to do. And in my subordinate clause, you is the subject, and have eaten, you need both of those bits together to form your tense, is the verb. And I'll just put it at the beginning here and put a little pink circle around it. So the have eaten is your verb, okay? Now, the next one, the way that it is structured is slightly different because if I am looking at this and I'm searching for my conjunction, Usually I look kind of in the middle of the sentence, but I'm looking in the middle of my sentence and I can't find my conjunction. So what is happening with this sentence number 2 is I have got, since he was sick, is my subordinate clause. And notice, because that subordinate clause is at the beginning of the sentence and my subordinating conjunction is since, because that is at the beginning of my sentence, there is a really, really important bit of information. This bit here, it needs to have a comma after the subordinate clause if it is at the beginning of the sentence, okay? And then I've got my main clause is actually at the end of the sentence. He couldn't go to the party, okay? And then when I look at it in terms of my subject and my verb, he is the subject, was is the verb, okay? And the sick is the noun to say what he was. It is a complement to the subject. And then in my main clause, he has a name. So I've got Ali is my subject, and he couldn't go is the main verb in there, okay? Now, I'm searching again for my conjunction. I was unable to go to the football match because it was raining. Ah, I know, I've spotted it. So I'm looking there. I have got my because. So because it was raining heavily. So that doesn't make any sense on its own because it was raining heavily. So that bit is my subordinate clause. It needs the main clause for it to make sense. And I was unable to go to the football match because it was raining heavily. Now, this is a little bit tricky to work out the subject verb bit. So I've got a few verbs in here. So I've got I was, so that is a subject. Was is a verb that's linking. I've also got to go, so that is your infinitive there. It's also another form of the verb, okay? Then I've got my conjunction that is the because, and that is my subordinating conjunction that we have got in pink there. Now, the subject here is the it. It's the pronoun, okay? And the actual verb is, again, your verb chain, was raining. So that's kind of, it's the verb that it's doing, okay? So put the verb there. And then in number 4, I need to search, I need to have a look, and I need to find my verb. Oh, I've spotted a comma, so I think I know what's happening here. So I need to have a look, and yes, my conjunction is at the beginning of the sentence. So let me just find my highlighter. So although she had studied all night is my subordinate clause, because it doesn't make sense if I say although she had studied all night. The main clause is the bit that is needed for it to make sense. Alexa failed her test. And notice that with this type of sentence, because we have that subordinate clause at the subordinating conjunction at the beginning, we have a comma after it, okay? And that's really important that you remember the comma there. And in terms of subjects and verbs, you can say, she is my subject. And again, had studied is my verb. And then in my main clause, my subject has a name. So Alexa is my subject. And unfortunately, she failed is the verb. She didn't pass the test. So that is the verb there. And the last one, even though he was tired, Tom agreed to help me. So thinking in terms of my conjunctions, it's not in the middle of my sentence again, but I can see that because I've spotted a comma. So that kind of helps me work out where my clauses are. And I have got my subordinate clause, even though he was tired. And this is one to be careful with because even though is the conjunction. So they go together, okay? And Tom agreed to help me is my main clause. So this bit here is my conjunction, is more than one word. So just be careful with the conjunctions that they fit together. And then I've got he is my subject, was is my verb, he was tired. Tired is my complement that is telling me more about the subject. And then in my main clause, he has a name. So Tom is my subject and agreed is the verb. Okay, so those are what we call the complex sentences. They have a subordinate clause, which on this screen we've highlighted in pink. The subordinate clause begins with a subordinating conjunction that we have circled, okay? And all of them, they still have the subject and the verb. And I will just save that to send to you. Now, the next bit is just to see if we are able to spot the different types of sentences. So the next one here, so I need to have a look. Is it a simple sentence? Is it a compound sentence? Or is it complex? Now, looking at it, I have spotted something. I have spotted that it has got an and. Okay, so if it's got an and, that's part of my fanboys. But I'm looking at this sentence and I'm looking for subjects and verbs in both parts of it. Okay, now here I've spotted a subject, I spotted a verb, playing, but my problem is in this part of my sentence here, watching rugby, I've not got a subject. I've got the verb, but I don't have a subject. So this first sentence, although it has the conjunction in it, it is still a simple sentence, okay? Because there is no subject in the second main clause. There isn't a second main clause. Now, the next one. Again, I have spotted an and there. Let me just highlight it. I've spotted an and, but I think I have the same problem because the first part of it, Polly is my subject, she has is verb, but the and is used to link 3 cats and 2 dogs. So again, I've still only got a simple sentence. The next one. Let me scan straight away for my conjunction. Yes, I've spotted it. So I have a conjunction here. Now, because I know that it's a subordinating conjunction, so because I was sick, it must be a subordinate clause because I've got the because there. Okay, and I have got I as the subject, go as the verb, and then I've got here I as the subject, was is the verb. So this particular sentence is a complex sentence because it has a subordinate clause in it. So I'll label it at the end. Oh, my next one. On Tuesday, John took a flight to Paris. Oh, so I don't have any conjunction in it. So straight away, I don't have a conjunction, so I must know without a conjunction, it is a simple sentence. What it begins with, the on Tuesday, is an adverbial phrase. It is saying when he went, okay? And John is the subject and he took. So that is the verb. And then the final sentence of the afternoon, the children ate cake as it was Mark's birthday. So I am looking here. I know my fanboys conjunctions. I have got my as my conjunction just here, and I've got my subject, the children. Ate is the verb. Cake is the object that they are eating. Now, the next one, what's the subject in the final bit? I think subject, it's kind of on the other way because the subject, it's Mark. It was his birthday. So although I've got it, Mark is the person whose birthday it was. So he is like the subject within that part of it. Okay. So let me just save this bit and I will stop that. But first of all, let me just